Hey folks, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. Today, we're going to talk about something that can affect all of us, including car dealers, but the average individual who, either buys a new or used car. And it's why there are so many bad vehicles out there. I mean, it's an epidemic. It's not a pandemic yet, but maybe it is. But we're going to talk about that and the specific issues that are leading up to that. Before I get into that, though, however, I want to brag on this. I'm not bragging because it's my town. We had an incredible event this past weekend in Greenville, Tennessee. 588 vehicles came to this car show. That's big. That's more cars than come to the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance. And it was very impressive. It was done in conjunction with something they call the Iris Festival. And it's not a flower show. It's a craft show and a food show, and they were run simultaneously. And if you got to see it, then good for you. I took several vehicles over there. My latest acquisition is that Ford Model 40 Deluxe Phaeton. It's a convertible four-door car. It's beautiful. Beautiful paint, beautiful restoration, just incredible lines on that car. And guess who won first prize out of all 588 cars? That car did. And I didn't even know I was in the running because I'm one of the sponsors. I had, 6 or 7 different vehicles there. I had a couple new ones, took a 1978 280Z that we keep in our showroom and a new Z car, new Nissan Z car, and I set them side by side. Boy, I mean, you can see certain similarities in design, but not much. The old Z has 125 horsepower. The new Z has twin turbos, V6, and 400 horsepower. So it just kind of shows you what evolution can do. Also took my car hauler, which it made it, and had a 1966 Mustang on the back of it, which got a lot of attention. And then just a few other things here and there. But it was a great success. But I want to get into this problem that we all face. We face it as new car dealers because we trade for a lot of cars. About, I would say 85% of the sales that we make of a new or pre-owned vehicle involves a trade-in. And, we have to buy that car, in essence. We're making an offer for the car, and the customer, if they accept it, then the car becomes ours. And they use that as a trade-in to hopefully reduce, what they have to finance. Sometimes they owe more on those cars than they're worth, but all we put in them is what they're worth minus the reconditioning expense that we think we're going to face. Like, if a car comes in and it has 50, 60,000 miles on it, and it's never had the brakes replaced or the brake pads or rotors turned or anything, then more than likely we have to build in a number for that because we're going to have to do it. Because my goal has always been, if I trade for a car, if the brakes are more than half worn out based on the thickness of the pads, then I'm going to replace them. And I think that's a good... there's really no reason to replace the brakes if it's stopping good, if there's no pulsation, and if you have at least 50% of the pad life left, because they could last another 30,000 miles. So we look the cars over really good, and we determine what it's going to cost to get them ready to sell. So if we guess wrong, if we miss something, then we end up having to put too much money in the car, and it makes it very hard to sell. Just like if you bought a car and you didn't even think about whether the pads were worn out, whether the coolant had ever been flushed. I mean, there's so many different things that kind of slide by that you don't really know about and can increase your purchase price significantly. So we have to be careful. And so just some interesting statistics we'll get into in just a minute about why this problem exists, why there are so many problem cars for sale. And when I say cars, I'm generalizing. I mean cars, trucks, SUVs, just about anything on 4 wheels. And we'll do that in just 1 minute. While I was on the break, I got Another of the many phone calls I get with the wrong number. My phone number is 423-552-2020. Apparently, the University of Texas has a very similar number. It's not 423-552-2020. It's 432-552-2020. And I answer the phone. I say, hello? And this lady said, yeah, is this the University of Texas? And I said, nope. Let me tell you what you did. And so I explained it to him about the area code. But tell you what, next time, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say, yes, this is the University of Texas, and you are not going to be accepted. And just see what they say. No, I won't do that. I want to. I think it would be funny. But it might give somebody a cardiac arrest or something, so I don't want to do that. Okay, so we're talking about why there are so many bad cars out there, problem cars that are being sold. Well, one of the problems is that there are 88 million more vehicles on the road in the United States than there were in the year 2000, 25 years ago. 88 million more today, and the average age of those vehicles in the year 2000 that were on the road was 8.8 years. You know what it is now? 12.6. Why is that, Lenny? Well, because cars have gotten so much more expensive, and really they do last longer. I'm seeing a lot of cars that are still really good with 300,000 miles on them. I mean, I wouldn't want to drive them cross country because it's just like a ticking time bomb, but they're still running. Original engine. But inflation has done a number on us. It's not just inflation, though. It's also government regulations on cars. And, a lot of those are really good. Crash worthiness, better fuel economy, way better fuel economy today than it was in the year 2000. But the average price of a new car in 2000 was $21,850. It's more than double that now. It's $48,000 as of last month. So people have to finance them longer. I mean, typical loan now is 84 months. It's crazy, I know, but that's what it takes for folks to be able to get the monthly payment into their budget, regardless what they pay for the car. How they negotiate. We talk a lot about not negotiating based on payment. But at some point, it boils down to what your monthly payment is, because that controls whether or not you can afford it in your budget. So more cars in general has greatly contributed to the availability of a lot of crappy cars out there. Also, there are more things that can go wrong. In 2020, electrical issues could be a problem, but for the most part, it was engine-related electrical issues, not body-related. Not the interior, not all the door switches and infotainment screens and digital dashes. No, it wasn't that much. Less than 10% of issues had to do with anything other than engine, transmission, stuff that was underneath the hood. Now it's 24.5% are directly related to non-engine electronics. That's scary. It's another reason why you should consider buying an extended warranty of some kind, because a lot of the stuff that we think might go wrong with the car usually don't. Engine, transmission, suspension, those kind of things. One of the biggest culprits are malfunctioning sensors. Modern cars have so many sensors that can fail, and they send incorrect signals to the engine control unit, which triggers your check engine light, and then you wonder what the heck's wrong with your car. And you go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's or someplace like that to get it diagnosed, and that's the wrong place to go. You need to go to the dealer that sells the vehicle that you are driving. But the sad thing is, a lot of these problems get passed on to the second owner. And, a lot of people that buy used cars, they go to independent shops or they go to their next door neighbor that has a garage in his backyard, and they can't fix the stuff that's on modern cars. Some of them can. Some of them got their training at a dealership. They stayed there for a while, and then they moved on. They wanted to own their own shop, but they just don't have the tools and equipment in many cases, not all. But you can have somebody, that's really good mechanic, and he can tinker around with something for a week, And when it's all said and done and you've incurred all these labor charges and paid for a lot of experimentation parts, you've wasted a whole bunch of money and has to go to the dealership anyway. And see, none of that stuff will show up on a Carfax report. That's why you need to get the car checked out. Okay, if you're buying a car from an individual, you need to get a mechanic to check it out, and you need to scan the computer system on the vehicle. And the only way to get that done is to take it to the dealership that sells that make, to their service department, and get the car evaluated. Just scan it, make sure there aren't any issues, make sure there aren't any open recalls. I mean, there are cars that are changing hands right now that are part of this General Motors engine recall. I mean, I see for sale signs all over the place. I saw a guy with a late model Chevy Silverado. It was a 2500 with a for sale sign in the window. He's driving it down the road, and it's got this big for sale sign on the front and on the back. And I'll bet you that he is selling that because he don't want to have to go through replacing the engine in that thing because it's got that 6.2-liter engine. Now, that's a manufacturing defect. It's going to be covered by General Motors, but it's a pain to have to go through that. It's a bad car right now. Another big reason why there are so many bad cars out there is just because people don't maintain their vehicles. And I think part of that is just the way things are now, because back in the old days, I mean, you had to change your oil every 2,000, 2,500 miles. You had to have a tune-up at like 12,000 miles. I mean, it was just more frequent, and it was more top of mind. Maybe not at the very top, not like the grocery list or something like that, not like having to mow the yard, but it was fairly frequent. Well, now, I mean, a lot of people don't change their oil until the light comes on that says, change your oil. And thank goodness the light comes on, because otherwise they wouldn't think about it. I mean, it can go on for a year. I own a car right now that you change the oil once a year or every 15,000 miles. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change my oil maybe every 6 months. And, right now I'm driving it so little, I might change it before I put 2,000 miles on it. But we see it all the time. I mean, we got people that are having check engine lights and performance issues, and we pull the valve cover off or the oil pan, and it is nothing but sludge. I mean, we had a guy the other day, had over 40,000 miles on his vehicle, never changed the oil, and his engine is destroyed. And he's fussing because he doesn't think he ought to have to pay for a new engine. I can tell him one thing, I don't care if it is under the powertrain warranty. Ford isn't going to pay for it, and they shouldn't have to. That's on him. But this is another reason. You're out there trying to buy a decent car, and you got people that are so preoccupied with their cell phones and their Facebook pages that they don't maintain their vehicles. They don't maintain anything, as far as their lawnmower, their gutters in their house, you name it. That's another big reason. There's so many bad cars out there. There's also salvage builders. There's guys and gals probably that all they do is go to salvage auctions. These are vehicles that have been totaled or wrecked, and some of them aren't that bad. When I say totaled, it doesn't have to look that bad. It just has to be old and the airbags have been deployed. Or if it's an electric vehicle, they total pretty easy. But I mean, on some cars, if you crash the front end, I mean, the two headlights will be about $5,000 worth of damage, and that'll total some cars. So what they do is they buy those cars and they fix them with junkyard parts. They halfway fix them. They clear all the codes, and then they sell it off a little gravel lot, and people buy them. And they start having electrical issues right off the bat, but they bought it as is with no warranty. And they're screwed because they don't have any recourse. I mean, it's sad, but there are people that are out there that, they don't care. Once they've passed that issue on to somebody else, they're wiping their hands of it. And another thing, and I think it's kind of the same thing, I think there's just more liars in the world now. Don't you? I think we've become desensitized to our fellow human being. Not all of us, or fellow human beings. Not all of us. I think social media, I think cell phones, there's no direct connection to a lot of consequences. And we see our national leaders, and not so much people on the state level, but national government people that we used to look up to, they just lie back and forth to each other and to the general public. I mean, you just don't know who to trust. And so it desensitizes folks to the stranger. You know, if they're a stranger and they have some type of a life-altering event, that's their problem. It's not my problem. I think a lot of people look at things that way. You know, I've got some shady competitors in the car business, and that's the way they look at the car business. They can rip somebody off. They can overcharge for everything. They can deceive, and they can sleep. You know, it just doesn't bother them. And the way they look at it sometimes is, well, you know, they signed the paperwork. Buyer beware. And that's just sad. That's why you have to really pay attention to what you're doing when you go in to buy a new or used car. And, you know, it's just, there's more liars in the world. I truly believe that. And that's sad. I pray that it improves, but I don't know that it's going to. But it's not just people in the car business. It's everything. I mean, I was trying to buy a piece of real estate one time, and the realtor was really pushing it pretty hard, and it was perfect. It was a corner lot, and it was great for what I was wanting to use it for. I didn't know there had been a gas station there many years ago. I didn't know that it wouldn't pass the EPA stuff, and they didn't tell me. I just lucked across somebody who knew, that had been around long enough, and they said, Lenny, you better check out that property, because that had a bunch of old gas tanks buried in the ground. So it's not always the person standing in front of you that's trying to deceive you. It's the person before them, or the person before them. You know, I've had it come up a few times when Carfax first came out, you know, where you could check vehicle history, and people were accessing that information. I remember having a couple of people show up to my dealership saying, you know, wanting to talk to me, and they came in and sat down and said, well, I bought this car from you like 3 years ago, and I went in to trade it, and somebody said that it had had an accident, that it had been in a wreck. Well, we didn't know it. Nobody told us. We didn't have Carfax at the time, and you know, we don't look back. We normally look forward. So we had to make accommodations to those folks. I apologized, and I can't remember how much, you know, what we did, whether we traded with them or gave them money. But we wanted to preserve the relationship, so we knew we had to do something. So pulling a Carfax or an auto check through Experian, one of those two, that'll tell you a lot about the history. You need to do that. And then, you know, if you're buying a used car, I would call the dealer that sells that make, call the service department, give them the 17-digit VIN number, and see what the warranty history looked like. See if there's any open recalls, and see if it was a problem car. You know, what's the warranty history say? I mean, did the people have to bring the car back a lot, you know, because of a bunch of issues? The Carfax will tell you if it was a buyback or if it's been wrecked, as long as the insurance company reported it. It's not 100% though, and that's why it's very important to be able to look at a car and tell whether it's had extra paint work done. You know, looking for tape lines and looking for any other signs like overspray on the frame. Or I always open the gas door just to see, because most body shops, for one reason or another, when they paint a fender or a quarter panel, they don't paint around inside the gas door, and you can see overspray and tape lines. They forget to do that. That's an insider secret. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, just as a reminder, some of you may disagree with this. I've heard the opposite for so many years. You know, the best person to buy a car from is the person who owns it. That's not true anymore. The best place to buy a used car is to buy it from a new car dealer, because they have the most at stake. Most of them are honest people who have to stand behind the vehicles that they sell. If you are buying a car as is, get it inspected. Just make sure then you can still always buy a service contract or an extended warranty. But get it checked out. Take it to a mechanic. Get somebody who knows. Pull the Carfax. Pull the auto check. I mean, if you buy a used car from somebody off of a gravel used car lot or, out of somebody's front yard, that's no guarantee that it's going to be a good car. As a matter of fact, it's probably more likely that it's not a good car because they tried to trade it and couldn't, and you've got no recourse against them. You really don't. But you do if you buy it from a new car dealer. And even when you buy it from a new car dealer, get the previous owner's name and call them. You're not going to be able to call them until the dealership calls them first and asks if it's okay for you to call them, and that's reasonable. But it's great. I mean, find out why they traded it. Ask them what kind of gas mileage they got. How often did they get the oil changed and so forth. And then you don't have to rely on some salesperson who doesn't know, avoids the issue, or doesn't want to tell you what the truth is. So these are things that you just have to watch out for with used cars. If you don't want to ever have to worry about that, then just buy new cars. But that could be a problem since the average selling price is now $48,000. But look at the bright side. You can always finance it for 84 months. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. If you got any questions, you know what to do. Text them to me, 423-552-2020. If you dial 432, you can enroll at the University of Texas. I'll see you next time.